What's up guys, Shirley here. Today we're going to be looking at some 8.3 casual PvP with a lot of bleeds, as well as talk about some upcoming stuff, Shadowlands news, beta, posts, balancing things, all sorts of fun things. So, as we near the end of the season and BFA as a whole, the pre-patch should be coming out towards the end of this month, I would guess. And I wanted to show off just the end of Warriors right now in PvP for BFA. I'm running 4 bleeds in the current build for this battleground, as well as Arena, frankly, at the moment. There are Deep Wounds, of course, Rend I'm spec'd into all the time for PvP, as well as Gushing Wound, the big one, Corruption's fun. I've got 8 of them stacked on this current gear set. I have used a little bit of variance in the past with versatility and gushing wounds, but frankly at the moment it's just more fun just to stack gushing wounds on everything. Even playing Fury, from time to time you can have 9 of them and it just does a ton of damage. And the last bleed is Cut of Death from geti'ikku. Geti'ikku, however you pronounce that. I was fortunate enough to get a 475 one. Which brings me to my next point of gear right now, what I'm running in this current build for this battleground, so you can, kind of judge off of my item level and whatnot, the damage that I'm doing for this. I've got 475 gear in every single slot for PvP, except for 1 trinket. I'm using a Gladiator's Badge that's at 470, just for the on-use strength for burst, as well as I like the passive versatility. Speaking of which, I'm sitting at about 22-ish% versatility in this, unbuffed, obviously with Conflict and Strife and Azerite traits and all that jazz. It fluctuates and it's usually a little bit higher. My Azerite is 480 chest piece, and I'm using the 2 490 pieces from the Mythic Raid for the helmet and shoulders. I'm using triple Lord of War for all this, 2 Gathering Storm, and 1 Crushing Assault. I can't think what the minors are off the top of my head, but, stat bonuses stuff, Elemental Whirl, stuff like that. And just wanted to, show off how this bleed setup works. And it actually turns the spec into, like, a really fun multi-dot thing. And right here, you see, like, Heroic Throw actually becomes useful because you can proc Gushing Wound and Cut of Death at the same time off of a single Heroic Throw. So anytime something's getting away from you and you're just throwing your weapon at them out of frustration, it's actually useful to get kills and stuff here. And Gushing Wound procs all the time, and it can proc an AoE, so if you set up a really nice Blade Storm or whatever, you can proc multiple Gushing Wounds on multiple targets as well as Cut of Death. So yeah, it's just a ton of pressure, and it works better, I feel, with arms rather than Furious, because you're still bringing Sharpened Blade and Mortal Strike to the table, which is so important. But anyway, moving on to some Shadowlands news. Ian Hazakostas recently made a blog post, or a dev post, whatever you want to call it, about, Shadowlands update and things going forward. Big surprise to nobody, they're not going to be going back on the whole Covenant thing, changing on will. They're going to stick it out going forward. This isn't news, really, I guess. I don't think anybody was expecting differently at this point. But we have to put up with that, so it means that they're going to double down on trying to balance everything, which brings me into the next point. Hopefully, ARMS sees some serious balancing now that we're, getting closer to the launch, because it just needs a little bit more damage, frankly. In the PvE side of things, PvP's kind of all over the place at the moment on the beta. It does good versus certain things, and obviously other people's damage impacts how well we can do as well. But it just needs a little bit of a bump. The utility thing, I'm liking where it's at right now. They recently removed a few things from the global cooldown, thank God. Not everything, but for Warrior specifically, we got Avatar and Recklessness off GCD. Feels great. They also included Sweeping Strikes, kind of. It's not off GCD, but they made it a half a global cooldown, so when you hit it, your GCD spins around twice as fast as normal. At least they recognize that it's awkward and it's a problem. I think it's kind of a half measure. I don't know why they're sticking to their guns on this one. It just needs to be off global cooldown, if you ask me. It still feels bad. But other than that, the avatar change for arms at least feels amazing, because prior to this change, especially on the beta, if you were running with one of the particular legendaries, the Signet of Tormented Kings, I want to say is what it's called, every time you avatar Bladestorm or Recklessness, it will randomly proc one of the other two. And the way the GCD worked beforehand, you would want to avatar before you set up like any kind of burst. You would avatar charge something or whatever, and that would, you know, if you were unlucky, you could avatar charge, and since charge is off GCD, you would proc a Bladestorm and you couldn't charge and you'd want to cancel it, and it felt awful. Now you can just charge your target and avatar, and if you get a Bladestorm proc, it feels a hell of a lot better, as well as Bladestorm itself proccing things still feels great. I'm enjoying that change. And the sweeping strikes thing is obviously really nice as it is, but it could be a little bit better. They still haven't addressed arms' mastery and AoE. Like, we're just kind of delegated to 2-target cleave and burst AoE with Warbreaker Bladestorm, you know, every minute or so, every minute and a half, if you're running with Avatar. It's not great. I think that all the fights that are going to have sustained AoE going forward, like Fury, is just going to be better if they don't do something about deep wounds being able to be reliably spread to more targets. So, you know, I don't know what exactly they want to do with that. If they're going to do anything with it, maybe just make cleave baseline and not replace sweeping strikes would probably be the easiest way to change that. But anyway, coming back around to Ian's post, he did bring up PvP gear, and that the vendors are kind of scuffed, so hopefully they do something nice with that, or just scale it way back so you can actually farm out a set of honor gear considerably faster than it is right now. That would be a nice change. They also briefly mentioned that they are considering doing set bonuses or PvP set item things. Think back to the old days where, like, Arms Warrior gloves would make hamstring cost like 5 less rage, things like that. Would be a nice little bonus to make PvP gear more attractive for, you know, the audience, rather than just it, you know, you want to go for all the raid gear because it's higher item level or whatever. They also could just make the stat lineups more abundant or more options, so we could have, you know, haste verse on everything, ideally, obviously. But we'll have to wait and see. At least they're looking at it, so I'm looking forward to see what kind of changes in the next couple of weeks they do to that, and I'll, you know, report and give my opinions upon that and any kind of feedback that I can. Other than that, for Arms Warriors in the beta, Rend actually got a buff just the other day. Not big, they didn't do anything else with the class so far. It still has some rage generation issues, especially early on without gear. But what they did with Rend is, now when you have it on your target, it will increase critical hit damage on that target by 10%. It's a nice little bump, and since you can put Rend on multiple targets, you could have this, you know, in a cleave situation, doing 10% more crit damage to everything. Sounds great on paper, and it is, but it's going to be one of those scaling things once again with arms. Like, when we're the first tier, especially when you don't have a full set of gear and we have very low crit and haste, you're going to want to stack haste regardless, but having that low crit rating as like a second priority is going to feel bad, and, you know, it's going to scale well once we have like 20% crit rating. Then it might see some competitive use. But as it is right now, or at least going into the expansion with low stats, I think Massacre is just going to be better, especially if you're going Condemn, because it's just more consistent damage. I guess if you were not using Condemn, then maybe the Rend buff, you know, we'll have to wait on Sims, but it might be worth it. Other than that, Fury saw a little bit of changes. They got the old spell, what's it called? Blood Fury, right? Or Blood Rage, that's what it is from Classic, is now a PvP talent for... I was really excited when I saw it, but unfortunately it's just for Fury. And what it does is, it's got a 20-second cooldown, and it's just an instant press, doesn't cost rage, and it generates 40 rage over a few seconds, and it also removes all roots and snares. They removed Thirst for Battle, I want to say, the PvP talent for Fury that removes snares every time you bloodthirst. And that was a while back, and I thought they were just gimping Fury's mobility for PvP, but no, they gave them this new on-use spell, Blood Rage, that will break roots, and this, I want to say, is going to be a lot better, because it's a guaranteed, you know, root break on a fairly low cooldown, and you're getting the rage generation off of it on demand for burst or ignore pains, whatever. I like the spell that's coming back. I wish that they would give it to arms, frankly. Like, even if they remove the root break, just generating rage on demand for arms would be amazing. Even in PvE, just make it like a talent. I think it would be great, or a passive, or baseline, anything. Like old school Arms Warrior in Classic, for example, it was baseline, so you just had on-demand rage generation. Would definitely smooth it out a lot more and just make arms feel better as a spec right now. But, you know, as it is, it's a nice little bump for Fury. We'll have to see how it all plays out. And that's about it, what I wanted to cover in today's video. Just thoughts on the beta coming up. Hopefully we see some tuning changes and some smoothing out of the rotation. They're both looking decent, regardless, especially arms for PvP. Oh, that reminds me, there was one last thing. Fury in PvP right now with Ignore Pain. Like, both specs have it. It seems way more usable as arms, ironically, even though it has rage issues in PvE, just because you're generating, like, passive rage from taking damage in PvP, and it costs less, so it feels like you can get Ignore Pain up on cooldown more often than you can Fury, because it's so much more expensive. But, you know, Fury can also heal itself, so is what it is. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next time. Peace.